welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari, the podcast that gains access to real and inspiring people. Before I speak to today's guest, I'd just like to make some announcements. I'd like to thank all those who continue to follow the podcast, those who give likes, make comments, and of course those who subscribe. I'd also like to say that if anybody's interested in taking out some form of sponsorship for their company or any business concerns, please contact us and we'll try and come up with the best deal that we can. Equally, if anybody's got any charitable events coming up and you'd like to advertise it, please give us enough warning so that we can spread that out and make sure nobody meets it. But you're more than welcome to contact us. So, let's dig, let's delve, and let's discover. Let's engage, let's inquire, and let's experience the fascinating life of today's guest, Chris Thrall. Chris, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Mate, you make me sound good.
Yeah, listen, I've spoken to you before. I'm going to declare this right from the word go. Myself and Chris have met before, and we have spoken, and I have to say, Chris made me feel very welcome on his own particular podcast, which he's advertising very nicely on the front of his attire. So yeah, Chris, it's really good to see you again.
You too. You too, mate. I normally
yes, you've overdone the modelling bit. It's okay. Right, I'm going to take these glasses off. That's it. I don't need those anymore. Yeah, Chris, it's good to see you, mate. And as I say, I really did enjoy our chat before. It's a fascinating conversation because you interacted with as well. You were telling me a little bit about yourself, so I really enjoyed that. And that certainly inspired me to invite you on today, that was for sure. And even kind of doing some sort of promotion before we spoke, you know, was fascinating in itself because you've lived such an extensive life, shall we say. So I'm not necessarily going to force you along, if you like, because you know your story. You know, you've told it enough times. You're very popular in the podcast world, that's for sure. So I'll start off maybe asking you where you grew up, Chris.
South East London.
Really?
Yeah, well, Kent, Bromley, probably an area you know better than I do, Frank.
Yeah, vaguely, yeah. Bromley, that's too posh.
Orpington, Petswood. They're just names to me. I vaguely remember the house we lived in as a kid.
All right.
Moved to the southwest at a young age and lived all over the country, really, mate. You know, my parents had their sort of issues.
Right.
And I think on 3 occasions as a young child, we got dragged out of school, literally, like, Chris, could you go to the front gate? Your mother's waiting for you, and that would be it. We'd be bundled off in a car. Mum and Dad had split up again. We'd drive or get the train 300 miles to Lincolnshire, where everything was just weird. The water tasted foul. People spoke with a funny accent. And I went to 5 schools before I was 10 years old.
Wow.
So that's 5 lots of upheaval, 5 lots of bullies you got to fight.
Yeah.
5 lots of teachers who were, well, let's just say it how it is. They were mostly abusers back then, Frank. You know, if they weren't physical or sexual abusers, they were just abusive towards children, because back then children we weren't long coming out of the era of children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
In fact, that was a very often quoted expression when I was young.
Yeah.
Why am I saying this? Because somehow all that upheaval and trauma that I experienced at a very young age, too young to be able to make any sense of it, so I internalised it all.
Yeah.
And carry it with me to this day, if I was honest. Somehow, out of that cluster F word, it's allowed me to smash everything in life. We normally look at deprived childhoods as a negative thing, and yes, it's they're not pleasant. But there's some link in there that's meant that I don't know what it is, Frank, whether it's the anger, the not wanting to take second best, maybe it's a bit needing to prove myself. It's just meant that I've smashed out life across, about 85 countries on all 7 continents now.
Yeah.
Done all the adventure sports I wanted. Got my pilot's license, skydiving license, scuba diving license. Worked all round,
I thought it was an achievement when I passed my driving test first time.
Yeah, funny enough, that was one of my biggest achievements. More so than skydiving and flying an aeroplane. That when you pass your driving test, it's a good old day. That is.
Yeah. When you make reference to when you being a child, and you say about the you speak when you're spoken to. I remember that quite vividly when I used to go to my grandmother's. You just did not speak. Children just sat there. You had to just sit there. And she literally did have the 3 brass monkeys on the mantelpiece. And if you went to speak, she just pointed at the 3 brass monkeys, speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil. And she meant it. She meant it.
Yes. It's a funny old life, mate, I've said this quite a lot in podcasts, but when I was a kid, complete stranger could just walk across the street and belt you across the head, right? And it's because violence was acceptable back then. That's just how you dealt with children. Right? And obviously I'm not agreeing with that. Second thing was, there wasn't all this protective mechanisms and laws and stuff in place. So I know it sounds weird, but I can tell you at least 2 occasions as a young child, so I'm not talking like a teenager. I've been walking down the street and a complete stranger's come up and just smacked me around the head. I'm guessing it's probably mistaken identity. Or kind of bloody kids have done this to my house or something, and there's one of them, something like that. But I remember I was walking through a fairground, I think it was in Plymouth, and some pikey, if we can call them that, come running out of an amusement arcade and just smacked me right around the ear, like flat of his hand. And that's fucking painful when someone catches you, bang, smack on the ear like that. And I'm walking along just holding my ear, and I caught up with my mum again, and she's like, "What's the matter with you?" I said, that bloke just hit me, mum. She's like, "What?" She said, "Why didn't you tell me?" Well, I didn't tell her because I just thought that's normal, I thought violence against kids was normal. So why should I tell her, And I kept everything to myself growing up. I was a kind of a self-contained unit, I suppose you could say.
Do you remember, Chris? I mean, once upon a time, I know when I was a kid, and you upset the local copper, he'd grab hold of you by the ear, and drag you the length of the road to your front door, and and tell your parents, what you'd done wrong, or what he'd perceived you'd done wrong. Could you imagine doing that now? I mean, could you imagine a copper grabbing hold of a kid's ear now? I mean, God, he wouldn't be in the force very long, would he? That's for sure. And I'm not suggesting that the first bit was necessarily right, but it did teach me a little bit between you don't want your ear yanked off,
Yeah.
Don't do it or don't get caught, But, So what sort of how did you get on at school when you know academically?
I couldn't concentrate. I didn't have an interest. I had the intelligence, but again, the reason, Frank, I talk about a disruptive childhood and violence and all this is it's really important to understand this is why people experience addiction in later life. It's that unbeknown to you, you're carrying this trauma. You don't feel right, you know? You don't know that you don't feel right. You just think you're like all the other kids and the teenagers growing up. And same with me in the Marines. I sort of felt different, but I couldn't like put my finger on it. Why? It's just when I look back at the amount of drugs I've taken in my life and the depths I've gone to in addiction and by that I mean like seriously nearly losing my life on occasions, watching my best mate die, drown in a lake on LSD, watching another best mate drink himself to death, all this horrible stuff, my own story, trying to crawl across a wire cable between two skyscrapers in Hong Kong because I was so mentally unwell. I thought that's what all my commando training had trained me for, right? It's not nice, mate. It's not nice. And why does somebody get to that stage? Because you still get people now, despite all the information, I go, oh, well, he chose to take the drugs. It's like, oh, fuck off, knobhead. You know? Do you honestly think I chose to have my parents told I needed to be sectioned and put in a mental health unit for the rest of my life? Do you think I fucking chose that? Or do you think more likely it's a manifestation of an incredibly damaged child who can't make it as an adult normally because of the damage that was done to me when I was too young to have any say in it? And you saying that's okay? It's okay to damage a child that much when they don't even... I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't know what was happening to me, you know? I didn't know what was happening to me, Frank, you know? So I talk about this stuff a lot just for people out there who want to understand. Because I guess if you're closed-minded, you're closed-minded anyway, right? You can give a fuck about other people. You probably live in your own ego and you're probably not that bright or smart. But there are people out there that are very kind and caring, that have empathy for others, that realise we've all got to get along, that we've got to understand why we have difference. And there's also a lot of people, especially after this last couple of years, what we've all been through, that will be struggling with their mental health. And I'm here to say, I've had it as bad as it comes. You know, I was that guy walking down the street talking to himself, the guy that your mum would grab you and you'd cross over the road because it's that guy again, right? I've been that guy. And yet, off the back of that, or subsequently, I've gone on and lived all my dreams. And I've not just lived all my dreams, but I've just done so much more than anybody else I know. And for anyone listening, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to big myself up here. I am literally nothing special. In fact, I could probably point out more of my faults than I can my good points, right? And also, you very kindly said, Frank, Chris, you've done a lot in your life, or however you phrased it. But the truth is, I haven't, mate. All the stuff I've done, whether it's skydiving, flying planes, being a commando, going on active service in the Northern Ireland conflict, scuba diving on icebergs in Antarctica on an expedition to the Antarctic Polar Circle, backpacking every country in North, Central and South America, getting kidnapped in French Guyana, teaching street kids in Mozambique, driving volunteer journalists to India and back, you know, on a 1978 school coach, so we could write articles about people living in poverty, scuba diving on a Great Barrier Reef, you know, being in is it Red Square in Moscow and the Tiananmen Square in China, getting pissed on the Great Wall, right? You're right, I've done a lot, but here's the thing, mate. If my life's that big, for people listening on audio now, let's say that's 100%, all the stuff I've done has only filled like 3% of my time. The rest of it, I've probably been sat on the couch watching telly or eating shit food or wishing I was out doing something or being in a crap job, hating my boss, thinking, oh my God, have I got to do this? You know, it's like I've done a lot, but if you look at I'm 51 years old, I could probably pack everything that I've done into like 5 years. So
it's not a bad CV though, Chris. Is it? I'm sitting here thinking, fuck me, this is like about 25 episodes of fucking Jim will fix it.
Yeah, without the touching
without all that stuff.
Without touching my bum.
I couldn't think of another programme to make one.
No, mate, it's all good. It's just, it does make you wonder, like if I've only lived 5% of my life, all right, let's be generous and say 10%. What of people that tell me, bloody hell, Chris, what have they lived? It's we're conditioned, aren't we? We're slaves, basically. We're told from childhood that we're no good, we're crap. The best thing we can achieve in our life is working for someone else, and we need to do it pretty much every single day of the year, except 2 weeks in the summer and a week at Christmas. And that if you don't do that, you're a bad person. And then you bring kids in the world and you brainwash them into doing that exact same scenario, which is fine if you absolutely love going to work. And I'm envious of people that do that. You know, if you love your job, I'm envious, right? Because I had to get out of employment. I had to get out of what I call the matrix and start thinking for myself. To get my freedom, Frank, is what I'm saying. I couldn't be free in a job. I couldn't be free with all that mind control and those rules. And even if you say one thing, you're trying to be helpful, you're trying to be a good person, they can spin it that it's gross misconduct. It's like, it's fucking what? You dozy brainwash wankers. Sorry, that shit ain't for me. Sorry, I sounding a bit bitter, but you probably can see.
Listen, it's called frankly speaking, and you're speaking frankly, and you know, and I appreciate that. That's that's exactly what we want on the podcast. And talking of podcasts, you know, I watch quite a lot of podcasts, and the theme you've touched on, or the subject you've touched on, with regards to your childhood, you know, and how that can shape the rest of your life. That is so common now. I hear that so much, that when people are trying to identify how they arrived at certain situations, you know, when they finally are kind of mature enough or stable enough to be able to look back, it always goes back to their childhood. It always goes back to their childhood, and that's coming. Excuse me, that's coming across, you know, clearly with what you're saying.
But I'll tell you something, mate, and this is fascinating. What I'm starting to come to realise is it seems to be all us people that have been through extreme trauma are the ones that are able to see life for what it is. You know, we don't get our news from the BBC, put it that way. We don't believe any of that horse shit.
Yeah.
You won't catch us. Yeah. I don't want to get your podcast in trouble, but let's just say, you know, You won't catch us wearing silly things on our face and then brainwashing our children into saying that that's fucking life. Because we see the truth in life, and we also see the sociopaths that control it. And that's a good thing. So it's ironic that going through all these challenges in life give you the vision in later life. I mean, how does that work? I don't know. I guess it's because we've seen unfairness from such a young age that we realise life is unfair. And off the back of that, we ask questions because we want to know why have we experienced this? Why do we see the world in this way? And when you've asked enough of those questions, it's almost a bit like all roads lead to Rome. And it's like those, don't know if people listening will remember, but you used to get these pictures and they're all made up of dots. Red dots and blue dots, say. Sometimes they were green dots and yellow or something. And one person would look at all these dots and just say, I don't see anything. Another person would look at these picture and go, oh, there's a spaceship and there's an alien and that it's a moon, right? I still to this day don't know if they were like a hoax, whether you just, don't matter who you were, there was nothing there and people just made it up. But my point is, it's a good metaphor for life, is some people, they see it and others, they're just like, nah, that's just a load of dots. And yeah, interesting.
Well, I think you got to live a life as well, ain't you, Chris? You know, someone said to me, why hadn't I done certain things? You know, why I'd left things to a certain stage before I wrote a book, for example. Excuse me, or even doing these podcasts. And I said, well, you've got to have some life experience in the first place. You know, you've got to have some of the answers to the questions. You can't keep asking questions of people or yourself. You know, you've got to find the answers as well. And where you touched on there, like say the media, I think until you've suffered at the hands of the media, until you've seen what lies they can tell, stories that they can concoct and conspiracies and so on, you might suspect it's going on, but until you've experienced it, you can't fully understand. And you know, I think I was born cynical, but there are certainly so many things that I'm far more cynical now because I've experienced certain things where there's been every reason to be cynical. And even now, you know, when I don't buy a newspaper, I might read a free one. But when I look at news reports, I'm sitting there picking it to pieces. I'm not sitting there listening to it going, oh, is that right? Oh, is that what's happening? I absolutely sit there and pick it to pieces until I'm satisfied with that I've got the answer to what's really going on, you know. And I know you do that a lot. I know you do that, you know, quite a lot. And we've spoken about it briefly as well.
Yeah, you have to see the way I've always seen it, and I don't think I'm wrong, is any game you ever play in life, there's always one cock that has to take it too seriously. Yeah, I remember we used to play basketball in the Marines, and it's just a laugh. It's you go and have your breakfast in the morning. Sometimes you fall in before breakfast. You chuck your PT kit on. It's right, lads, let's go down to the gym. Someone grabbed a basketball. And you go down and it's just a laugh, you know. You're not a match or anything. You're not training. None of you are professional. In fact, half of you don't even know how to play. You just got to chuck the ball in that hoop, sort of thing. And there's always one that's just fucking charging into people and barging them, and it's like, dude, it's just a fucking laugh. Chill the fuck out. You play Monopoly, you know. Is it not one person wants to get all the money? They want that monopoly. And you're just there. I mean, to be honest, it's normally you play at Christmas. And for me, I'm always like when can I open the next beer or crack another snowball or something. I'm more interested in the alcohol than I am in, or at least I was when I was younger.
Yeah, I don't really want to be an estate agent. I just want to have a light out.
Yeah, exactly. But what you need, and then there was the guy, the boy at school that was willing to cheat to pass his, to get the top of the class or what. And you saw this. You just saw it. Occasionally they get caught and it'd be the head boy he's been caught cheating and all this, like, you could see the pressure that's been put on this young lad by his parents from a young age and all this sort of stuff. Well,
we're not talking about Boris, are we?
He's a prime candidate, mate.
I could have said that about any politician, quite frankly.
Also, we got to be realistic, Frank. Well, I'll finish that point and then I'll come on to Boris. But the thing is, in life, it's no different. People are born sociopathic, i.e. lacking empathy for others because they've not had it themselves, or they're bred into it by having overbearing, dominating, let's say predominantly a father that's like, right son, it's all about the business, make it at whatever cost. These people are scum, you're not, you're the chosen one. You get up there in that corporation and you pollute the seas, you pollute the land, but if you make a buck, that is your sign of, is sociopathic thinking, right? And the notion that the globe isn't one big game and that there's these sick individuals trying to control it is I think it's very naive. If you think that the people that control this have our interests at heart and they love us, I think you're going to be in for a big surprise. I'd say you probably led quite a sheltered life, because I've worked with lots of men in my life that would kill you at the drop of a hat, and I know you have too, Frank. And it does get serious and it gets frightening and it gets dark. They got their muppets like Boris. So what? Public school boy. Probably was raped the first time by the time he was 10. Now he's being blackmailed off the back of all that shit, now that he's in power, because he's carried his perversions into later life. I'm not talking about Boris specifically. I'm saying this is the scenario for our politicians. This is why they live in such a den of fucking filth, right? Is they're bred into this life. They're bred into thinking that they're better than other people. They have all this stuff that they have to, or at least they perceive they have to hide, because it's not really cricket, which is quite ironic because they play cricket at those schools. But they get groomed from a very young age by all these sets of bullies above them, and it's the same when they get into Parliament, and they're blackmailable. This is why they're put there. This is why they go along with these decisions that are just not in the public interest. Iraq, for example. What was that about? Why did we have a certain individual, I'm not even going to say the scumbag's name, but just insisted we go into that slaughter, even though the country were just like, what do you mean Middle East? What have they done to us? Concocting this farcical lie. Anyway, Frank, I didn't mean to get too heavy on your podcast, even though it's frankly speaking. I just bring this stuff up because this is how deep understanding the complexity of life is. And I'm a parent. And my kid comes first. It's just that simple. My kid, I didn't bring him into the world to be an idiot, to be a coward, and to just go along with the bloody, the black box in the corner of the room that's owned by the sociopaths that tells us what to do. That it's just not who I am. I'd rather go out fighting, right? And until until people can understand that this is not the way, nothing's going to change, is it? Nothing's going to change. And I guess I probably wouldn't be saying this now if it wasn't for the fact that we've essentially lost our freedom now. This is the first time in my 51 years where you can actually be placed under house arrest for almost 2 years for doing nothing. You did nothing. For just being a human being, right?
Yeah.
And I know that for some people, probably like, yeah, but it was about. No, it's not about that. It's not about that. Educate yourselves. Read books. Read books. It's about control and power. It's about having a docile population that their only source of information is that television screen. And it's frightening, and I speak out about it because, like I say, my kid comes first. It's that simple. And he certainly comes before someone who's, thinks you need to put your underpants on your face to save the human race. I'm not having it, So, anyway.
You put a lot of thought into people's, well, I hope you have. Put a lot of thought into people's heads there, and if there are those who don't think, if you like, for want of a better way of putting it, maybe you've given them good cause to. What I'd like to do, Chris, is take you back to when you first joined the Marines.
Yes.
Or why did you join? Why did you enlist?
Well, I felt pretty useless leaving school. I took a load of exams. They were called O-levels back in those days, as you well remember, Frank. Similar to what GCSEs are today, I'd say. Anyway, I took a load. I failed most of them. I felt useless leaving school. I just felt like that life was for other people, not for me. And of course, when you're in that frame of mind, and then someone offers you an opportunity, it can seem really, really appealing. Now, and when I say opportunity, it's an opportunity that fits you at that time. So, for example, my first ever real proper thing that I did out of school was I was an electrician's apprentice. And it was okay. I'd always kind of liked technical sort of stuff. But I found myself surrounded by people that had quite limited aspirations on life. And again, no judgment on them. That's fine for their lives. But I wanted more, Frank, I didn't want to just be crawling under floorboards for the next 40 years of my life and drinking a beer at the weekend and watching the football and saying, and I wanted to see the world. I wanted to adventure. I don't know. So then you get something like the military, gives you all of that, and it pays you for doing it. And it takes care of your medical. And it gives you gives you your clothes. And it gives you a sense of achievement and pride and respect. And yeah, it massively feeds into your ego being in the military. That's what they want. They want young brainwashed people that don't think too much and that think that going to war is a good thing, or is an honourable thing, or that it's the right thing. It makes a hero of you, or whatever the case may be. So it's really appealing when you're young. And I tried getting in the RAF and they wouldn't have me. I didn't really know what I was talking about, so I don't blame them. And then my mate joined the Royal Marines, and his dad was a Falklands. Don't like using the word hero because there's no such thing as a hero. People do heroic things in the military, but joining the military doesn't make you a hero.
I understand what you're saying.
In fact, there's lots of knobheads in the military. I won't be calling them a hero. But anyway, my mate joined the Marines, bet me I couldn't do it. His dad was a bit of a legend, is what I'm trying to say. He was a Falkland, big guy in the Falklands, or a well-known guy. And when my mate, I was homeless and sleeping in my car, I'd been kicked out of home. This was the second time I was kicked out of home as a teenager. And my mate come up, probably knocked on the window of my car and went, "Oh, I just joined the Royal Marines. I've done this 3-day course at Lympstone, the Commando Training Centre. They put us through hell to see if we were good enough, if we've got what it takes to enter training to be a Marine. This isn't to become a Marine. This is just to enter the training. You have to do a 3-day course." And they beast the hell out of you, as we would say. And he was full of it. And he said these immortal words to me, Frank. He said, "But I bet you couldn't do it." Well, you don't tell an angry young man what he can and can't do, because he's just going to set out and prove you wrong. And that was it. I wrote about this in my latest memoir. Where is it? The first opening chapter of my latest book, State of Mind. Oh my God! Hang on, look. The studio's falling down. Is that good? Yeah. But
at least we've proved it's live anyway, Chris.
Yeah, because my little one would say, "Oh, silly me." But anyway, my latest book, State of Mind, is the story of how I ran the length of the United Kingdom. Ran an ultra marathon every day for 36 days, carrying 15 kilograms of camping gear on my back.
God, what are you going to say? Something else from it. They'll say, "Careful what you say."
But the opening chapter of that is how I set myself a little challenge. Where I lived, there was an old airfield, and it was a mile around the airfield. And I set myself the challenge of running that mile, but without stopping. And it was a killer. It was hard. I got about halfway around this circuit, and everything in me just wanted to give up. I'm breathing out my ass. I'm exhausted. And there was just a little voice inside me said, "If you give up, you're just going to be a failure for the rest of your life. You know, anyone can give up, but if you persevere, you can go down the recruiting office and sign on for the Royal Marines, and that might open up. You know, that it might just give it's worth going for." And that's what I did. So I cracked that 1 mile run, went down the recruiting office. Back in those days, it was literally a case of hop up on that pull-up bar. That's all they did at that stage. They said hop up on a pull-up. So I hopped up on this pull-up bar, and I did 29 pull-ups. Right? He's like, "Right, okay, get down." I thought, oh fuck, I failed. These Marine types probably do like 40 or. I didn't know that 29 pull-ups is like an exceptionally high amount of pull-ups to do, and that most people in that recruiting office struggle to do 5, if not 6.
Right.
And that I'd more than passed that stage in the process. And then they pack you off to Lympstone for your 3 days, and at the end of it, after you've done the endurance course, the assault course, the Tarzan course, you've done lectures on military weapons and stuff, and you've had to pass your English and maths tests, quite basic, but you know, just to check that you're not, you know, too challenged in that department, you know. After all that, they call you into a room, and 13 of us had started. One guy fell off the 30-foot ropes knocked himself unconscious, so he got sent home. One guy decided it wasn't for him. Took us down to 11. One guy, I think, just was throwing up in the gymnasium tests, and they sent him home. So there's about like 10 of us left. And he said, and they called us up to attention, and they got 4 guys. I'm making these numbers up for, I can't remember, 30 years ago, but it was something like it might be different if you read my book, is what I'm trying to say. But they got like 4 guys, and they said, right, you 4 up to attention, into the colour sergeant's office. And they took them into the office, and I think the rest of us 6 outside probably thought all the same thing. We failed, you know. These guys have passed, and we've all failed, right? Yeah. Anyway, the guys came back out, and without saying a word to us, they'd obviously been told not to speak to us. They just filed out. Then they called 2 more guys in, and I thought, right, I've got it now. The 4 guys have passed. The 2 guys are going to be told, look, we like you. You did your best. You've got what it takes, but come back for a 6-month referral. They used to do this, right? I thought, and us 4, we failed. Damn, and I was gutted, mate. I was picturing going home on the train. How was I going to tell my parents, both of whom had kicked me out of home, that I was a failure? It was awful. It was just awful. Then the door opens, and the corporal to the colour sergeant says, right, the colour sergeant the colour sergeant came up and said, right, you 4 in my office now. And we marched there. We don't march, but we walked in. He said, right, right, fellas, pat yourselves on the back. You've all just joined the Royal Marines.
Wow.
And that moment in my life was just, nothing's ever touched that, Frank.
No, I can imagine, mate. I can imagine that the feelings you must have had at the time.
Passing my pilot course, my skydiving, even I like passing my driving test was a big moment in my life. You know, that achievement, right? That didn't even compare to that moment. And if I was honest, even though my boy is the best thing that's ever happened to me, undoubtedly, unequivocally, and I'm the luckiest man in the world just to have that lad. Even him being born didn't compare to, didn't compare to just being told that you're now training to become a Royal Marines Commando. You are effectively, at that stage, you are a Royal Marine. And you can buy yourself a sweatshirt with Royal Marine on it and go and show all your mates. And
we didn't have them in the Scouts, Chris.
So that was it. That was it. And I passed training. It's 8 months at Lympstone. Toughest basic military training in the world. And the longest. I went to 4-2 Commando, based in the southwest. We went straight out to combat in the Northern Ireland conflict. That was the 20th anniversary of troops in the province at that time. So you'll know all about this stuff. It was the allegedly, because it all comes through intelligence, doesn't it? But allegedly the IRA were out to do all they could to disrupt as much as they could and kill as many Marines as they could. We had our first guy shot dead. We had a guy shot dead within 2 weeks of being there, basically. Might have been 3, but pretty much straight away, bang, it's real life. The guy behind me, Jock, got hit 3 times by I'll say a gunman, because technically he was a gunman, but is what people might think was a sniper would probably, if I say sniper, makes more sense. I say that because he didn't have a sniper rifle. He had a Kalashnikov, which isn't a sniper rifle. But if it's pointed at you, especially from 150 metres, it may as well be a sniper rifle.
Just as well, yeah.
Yeah. So Jock was hit 3 times, and luckily he survived. I was next to Jock in the patrol, and the gunman fired, I think it was 8 rounds. So if the first 3 hit Jock, you can guess who the next 5 were fired at. Right?
Yeah.
By which stage I was fucking running as fast as I could, cocking my weapon as I ran to take cover. First time we went out to barracks, our team ran out the front gate. The IRA blew up the back gate. One day we were in our accommodation room, our bedroom basically, and there was 8 bunk beds in there, I think, just to give people an idea of how you lived.
Yeah.
And the mortar alarm goes off, so the camp's mortar alarm, and you know it off by heart because obviously you have to listen to it to know when the IRA are mortaring you. And the mortar bombs came in. We all dived under our bed, pulling our flak jackets on top of us and giggling like little schoolboys, basically. And the mortars missed. I shouldn't laugh, really. It's not funny, but sometimes you've got to laugh, haven't you? The one mortar knocked a boy off his bicycle. I think that was in a Catholic area, so it's almost like an own goal. Well, it would have been a Catholic area. We're in North Belfast. And another one of the mortars went through someone's roof. Fortunately, didn't explode.
Oh.
So that was a full-on 5 months of my life.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't carry any scars off it, you can say, although people try and tell me I do, but
yeah,
to me it's just real life, mate, you know.
Yeah.
Real life.
How old was you then, Chris?
19.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Insane, mate. Insane. Will fully admit I knew nothing about the world. Thought I was a hard little. Well, I was pretty tenacious, but
yeah,
you know,
that is young, Chris. That I know you know I know that environment,
yeah.
And 19. That's
you're 19 really... and you're entrusted with a machine gun to walk through a major city on the British Isles or the Irish Isles, depending on what you're, you know.
Point of view, yeah.
I don't get involved in that stuff, mate. There's one humanity, and I believe in that one, you know. But I do empathise with the whole situation. It was horrible then.
And it's not like there was 2 straight lines, was there? It's not like you're forming a line and the enemy's forming a line and you're shooting at each other. In that scenario, you didn't know which direction it was going to come from, did you?
No.
I
won't say.
In other words, it wasn't conventional warfare, was it?
No,
that's what I'm trying to say.
It wasn't conventional. The IRA were probably the best soldiers in the world of that type of fighting. I mean, they must have been, because if you look at how many soldiers were killed compared to probably getting on dodgy ground here. I don't mean to upset everyone, but I think you've got to respect your enemy, or at least your perceived enemy, because if you don't, I think you're laying yourself open.
Yeah.
but they would do things like they would snipe at you, but they wouldn't just lean out the window. They weren't that stupid. They would be in a room with the curtains pulled to within one inch. Be dark, obviously the light would be off in the room, so the room's in darkness. They would then be lying on a, let's say, an elevated platform, so a bed lifted up, be behind, let's say, a wardrobe that they've smashed the back out of, and the doors are just opened again, like an inch. What they're effectively doing is stopping anybody from outside seeing into that room, seeing muzzle flash, seeing smoke come from the barrel of the weapon, seeing movement.
Yeah.
And then they can take that snipe at you. You're a 19-year-old soldier. Where
did that come from?
How are you supposed to know? How you know? Or a radio controlled device, where you're never going to know where the trigger man is for that one.
No.
Even a command wire device, which is where they lay in a cable, can be years before. Can be a cable that's laid in that's just never been used. And when the IRA soldiers, or any other combatants for that matter, around the world, whether it's Afghanistan or wherever, they just rock up in an instant. They connect their device to one end of that cable, and their detonator to their trigger to the other end, and that's it. They could be 200 meters away. That device could run through several back gardens, can run up an alleyway, can go up a drain pipe across a
yeah.
and they don't have to see you. They just have matey in his front room watching, I don't know, Saturday Sport, picks up the phone, says a code word, balloon. Balloon means that the soldier has just stepped in front of the device. Bang. And that's it. Take out your whole patrol. And yeah. But despite that, Frank, I loved every minute of it. And I think it was Sebastian Junger, the chap that wrote Perfect Storm. He also made a brilliant documentary called Restrepo, where he embedded with a troop of US Marines in Afghanistan for 6 months. And Sebastian Junger, when he does his TEDx speech, says, till we can answer what is it about young men, I'll say young men because the forces is predominantly young men in that frontline role. What is it about young men that they'd rather be in the shit, in the thick of it, seeing their mates get arms and legs blown off or getting dead, but they still would, they come back from a war and they just want to go straight back to it. What is that, Why was it that for someone with my mental makeup, patrolling the streets of Belfast where someone could go bang any second, why was it that I loved every second? Yeah.
Where did you go from there, Chris?
Went up to Norway, went up to the Norwegian Arctic to do Arctic warfare training. Again, fascinating, but whereas Northern Ireland, it suited me down to a T. It was a bloody hot summer. That summer of '89 was hot, really hot, and you got all your combat gear on and your flak jacket and all. We used to sweat buckets, but you just get used to it, Frank. Right? You just literally, you get used to it in the way someone gets used to running marathons and they're nothing, right? But up in Norway, it's cold. Not a horrible wet kind of cold like we have here, but it can get bitter up there. And when you've been skiing for 15 miles and that's hard enough. You're skiing with anything up to a 60, 70, 80 pound pack. The bigger guys carry more because they might carry all the tent gear because they're just like Goliaths. Doesn't affect them so much, right? In fact, to be honest, you've all got to carry all the basic essentials, right? So you're all carrying pretty much the same. You got to try and ski downhill on cross-country skis, which are not like the skis you go on holiday with. They're not all nice and fit. Your feet aren't fixed into them. Your first time, you ski a metre and you fall on your ass. Then your mates pick you back up. You ski another metre, you fall on your ass. The weapon across your chest smacks you in the face. You get your first cut. Ski another 3 metres, fall on your ass. Weapon smacks you in the face, gives you another cut, right? This is all the Marines listening now will tell you this is a very familiar scenario. Everyone has to go through this.
Yeah.
And you ski, you get better at it. The first time I put a Bergen on, a rucksack, and a pair of skis, I thought it was a piss take. It honestly felt impossible. It was just ridiculous. As ridiculous as if I said, Frank, go and lift up that car. You'd be like, you are joking, Chris, right? I'm like, no, go and lift up that. Right, it was that, it felt that ridiculous. I thought it was a joke. I thought, I bet what the lads do is they get dropped off here by the choppers, so the helicopters. Then they wait for a vehicle and they load all the kit on the vehicle, and then they just ski in loose order.
Yeah.
No, all the blokes put their Bergens on and they all just started snaking off in single file. And you got to get yours on rapido and follow them, or fit in your part of the snake, and it's real. And yes, you fall over and they pick you up, and then you fall. Some fall over more than others. I wasn't too bad at it. I learnt to pack my Bergen as light as I could possibly get it. And then actually I had a little bit of skill and grace. I was quite good at skiing actually. I came 7th in my whole company on the very first race I ever entered. And that was on the second weekend of being in Norway. So it wasn't like I'd had loads of training. I just took naturally to it. Plus I'd learnt to downhill ski back in the UK on the plastic slopes. But what I was getting to is, you ski 15 miles in that sort of state, it starts to get dark, bit of like snow starts coming in, you get your shovels out, you dig a clearing, you get your tent up, you then got to dig a wall over the tent to stop any light from the tent, showing across the valleys to potential enemy. Just as you get that tent up and all your sleeping bag and everything laid out, your corporal says, right, Chris, you're on first guard, right, first watch, so you've got to go and stand sentry duty for anything. It might be 2 hours. In the Arctic you generally keep it to an hour or 2 hours at the most, but you're looking forward to getting in your bag and getting your cooker on and having a nice meal because you're starving, and instead you've got to stand outside in the freezing cold for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Then your mate comes and relieves you. Goes, all right, Chris, if you're lucky, he's cooked your food for you. So you get in a tent, you get snuggled in your sleeping bag, you get your duvet boots on, you take your wet ski boots off, put these things called duvet boots. You just feel like you're in luxury. And you start scoffing your food. And then you hear the dreaded immortal words, "Pull pole," from your troop commander. Pull pole means you got to take everything down and move again. Because you're not stopping here for the night. You got to ski that way another 5 miles, another 10 miles. Right? You're going to ski all through the night. And as I say, when you're 19... Was I 9? Yeah, I was not. I was 20 by then. it's horrible, mate. I found it horrible. I didn't want to move.
Don't worry, I wasn't sitting here feeling envious, I can assure you.
No, I'm just thinking if anyone expects some stereotypical hard nut here, I'm hard in some areas of my life, generally mentally, but that cold, I hated it. That cold and the exhaustion. Yeah, that was hard. But looking back, I wouldn't swap that experience for the world. And would I go back tomorrow and do it as an adult? Oh, I'd love to. At this stage in life, where now I've got control over my emotions and my thinking, I'd love to go back and do it. Yeah, so that's Norway, really. Just another experience that didn't seem so easy at the time, but looking back, I feel very fortunate to have had it, Frank. You know.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Brilliant. So now we get on to Hong Kong.
Yes, Hong Kong. So I left the Marines to run a business in Hong Kong. I won't bore you with the details, but just again, my sort of obsessive mind, I found a business that I was quite good at. Immediately, my psychology is telling me this is going to bring me happiness, you know. So bang, let's chase this one now. So
yeah.
You can see in my life all the times where I've just leapt on board. I've leapt on this shit or I've leapt on that shit, thinking it's going to take me to the promised land, and that's it, you know. When you become spiritual, you realise you were already in the promised land to begin with. You just didn't realise it. But yeah, there I am with this business. I put my notice in the Marines because I started it part time. It was doing really well. It's not to big myself up, Frank, because I'm not into all that nonsense now. But at the time, when you're a young 25-year-old and you're driving a top of the range BMW and I had a mobile phone when like nobody would have known what they were. What's that? It's a phone. Really? Yeah. It wasn't quite a brick, but it wasn't far off it.
Wasn't a Del Boy special, was it?
Yeah, it was that. It wasn't quite as big as Dell's, but it was about, it was a good old size. It was a Motorola, it was.
Oh, right, yeah, I just about remember those.
But there I am, I'm being heralded by this company that I marketed products for as their next, let's say, millionaire. Turned over $100,000 one month. You got to remember, this is 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I'm earning £3,000 from my business a month and £1,000 from the Marines. So you can see why I was mistaken for thinking I'd made it in life. The company were heralding me as their next diamond in this marketing plan that they had. And I had the biggest business in the Asia Pacific for them. So I had the first ever network marketing organisation in China. And I had about 1,000 distributors in Hong Kong. And yeah, I thought I'd made it. But by the time I put my 18 months notice in the Marines and got out to Hong Kong, all the business I've just mentioned had pretty much collapsed.
Oh.
And after a quick meeting with this company's headquarters, the company I marketed products for, it's a company called Quorum. Some people might even remember it. And the director said that the problem was with me because I wasn't working hard enough, which was just a bit of a silly thing to say. I just turned around and walked away, Frank. And even at that moment in my life, I thought, I'm never going to think about this again. You know? Even though I'd given it 3 hard years, even though I'd left the forces to run this business, even though I was supposed to be the next millionaire for this company, even though I'd been turning over $100,000 one month, I turned around and I never thought about it again. till I wrote my book 20 years later. Seriously, I just thought, this is a dead horse. No point thinking about it. Not going to do me any good. Right, next. Unfortunately, that next was a series of very bizarre jobs in Hong Kong. There's lots of scams in Hong Kong. It's the business capital of the world. So you can find yourself there selling products that don't even exist and making a lot of money. You know, you can make a lot of money doing it. Advertising space, for example. I show you a glossy advert and I say, Frank, look at this. You know, look at the glossy advert you ran in our magazine last month. Can I hit you up for another 6-month subscription? There you go, boss. If you can just sign there, right? So you're some ultra powerful senior executive in a company, Frank. You ain't got a clue whether you advertised with my company last month or not. You got some guy in a smart suit with a gift of the gab pushing a pen in your hand, and these managing directors would go, oh, okay, and they'd sign this this contract, not even knowing that A, they never ever advertised with us before. B, this advert I've just showed them of their company in a glossy. My boss made that on his computer in his lunch break, right? Seriously, it was called desktop publishing back then. It was before all like Adobe Premiere Pro and and all the other applications. And the final insult to injury was this magazine didn't even exist. The boss only had 20 copies printed, 1 to give his phony salesman and 5 to sit on the shelf in the office just in case one of these businesses ever rocked up one day and went, come to chat about our advertising with you. And in our Hong Kong business advertiser, right? We were telling these directors that this magazine went to every company in Hong Kong, every business, every hotel, every library. This gets sent out to everybody that's advertised. No, it's just complete horseshit. And then the advert that they're looking at, so if you're talking to the director of Concord, Hong Kong, he's looking at a picture of one of his aeroplanes at Hong Kong airport. He doesn't know that my boss took that photo in his lunch hour. My boss took that photo yesterday, and he's just put he's copied Concord's business details just from an actual business magazine. So their their phone numbers, their fax numbers, as we used to use back then. Copied their slogan, so come fly with me or whatever the bullshit was, right? And I know it sounds funny, but again, it comes a little bit back to that thing that we judge people on our behaviour. We think, because we're relatively good people, we mess up occasionally, but we're quite kind, we think that everyone's like, and no, lots of people are not. Lots of people are sociopathic. They don't care about you. They care about the money in your wallet. So I did a couple of these jobs, and the moral side of me wouldn't let me do it, Frank. And I'm not trying to big myself up or anything. I had one guy, he was a nice English chap over there, and I gave him the spiel, tried to push the pen in his hand, and he went, Chris, just 1 second. You said you're from the Hong Kong Business Advertiser? Yeah. Well, that's funny. You see, we do all our advertising ourselves, and we're a design company, so we design all our adverts, and that's not one of ours. Wait a minute, I'm just going to go and get our invoices, and I'll show you. Mate, so he disappeared through that door to go and get the invoice to show I was a complete phony. I turned and ran away, mate, and I was ashamed. I was ashamed of myself. Why am I trying to cheat people, And that was it. Anyone wants to read more, I'm going to punt my second book, if I may, mate. Eating Smoke.
Yeah, certainly, of course, yeah.
One man's descent into crystal meth psychosis in Hong Kong's Triad heartland. And so while all this is going on, and I'm bunking in with a mate in Hong Kong, there was a guy that I was in business with. As all this disturbance is going on in my life, so I'm trying to readapt to Civvy Street after being in the military 7 years and learning a specific set of rules, how you go about life. And I'm now realising that those rules don't work in Civvy Street. So to give people an idea what I'm talking about, in the military, or at least back when I was in, if you had a problem with someone, you took it outside. You both beat each other up, then you shook hands and it wasn't a problem again, right? If someone was a complete cock to you, you just decked them and then they wouldn't be a complete cock. It's just what happened. I'm now having to learn in Civvy Street, you can't behave like that, you know.
Yeah.
When you work in a company with someone and they are an absolute effing dickhead, you can't just catch them, you know, in a hallway one day and stick the nut on them. And I don't know, I guess this probably sounds bizarre to some people watching, but this is the strength, the level of the conditioning you've been through as a soldier. You're learning that you haven't got that paycheck at the end of every month. You ain't got nothing unless you work for it. You actually have to turn up and be there. Whereas in the military, you're always looking to get away and get home and get a morning off or an afternoon off, or leave work on maybe a Thursday afternoon, have a long weekend, this sort of stuff. And it doesn't work like that. In Civvy Street, this company, we started at 8 in the morning, we finished at 8 at night. It's 12-hour days every day. You've got to be there. At the same time, my girlfriend at the time came to live with me and then decided she didn't like Hong Kong. She left and she got a job with, she actually got an interview with British Airways, and she said, I'm sorry, I'm off. I'll be back. And I knew she'd never be back, right? And at the same time, someone introduced me to crystal meth, this incredibly potent form of amphetamine. And in a sort of nutshell, for me, it was the key in the lock, Frank. You know, I felt so. Well, I won't say, because you on certain platforms you can't say how substances make you feel, because they deem it that you're glamorizing the substance, and I'm not here to do that. But let's just say all that childhood trauma we talked about earlier, all that's taken care of. You know, all that failure at school, all that's taken care of. All that insecurity about being in a foreign land, 8,000 miles away from home, where people speak a different language, and you got no money, and you're bunking with a mate, and you're £8,000 overdrawn. All that's taken care of. This thing takes care of everything, and at the same time, just makes you feel brilliant. Like the person Mother Nature put you on this planet to be. That brilliant, right? Well, it's hardly surprising people get addicted to when something can make you feel all those things, is it?
Yeah.
It's fixed all of my life's problems in one go, and it's fixed problems that I didn't even know I was experiencing.
Yeah.
So what happens in that pattern of addiction is you chase that feeling, because you don't want to go back to being normal again, because your normal isn't a nice normal like a lot of other people's. It's something's not quite right with your normal. So you chase that feeling, and soon you become dependent on that. It depends what it is you're using. It might be a physical dependence, as you get with say an opiate type of substance, or with the meth that I was taking, or amphetamine based thing. It's a mental dependence. You need it. You need to feel that good. You know, you need to feel that high, that energy. Also becomes a physical dependence from the perspective that when you haven't got any, you crash. You crash really badly. absolutely exhausted. The energy I was expending was just phenomenal, especially when I started working as a doorman, which I'll come on to, because I'd work on the door all night, have a couple of beers on the door depending on what the rules were of the club. Sometimes the manager would bring you out a Corona, which was nice. Finish at 2 in the morning when all the last of the expats went home, and they're all, thank you for a great night, mate. You know, it's a real ego job being a doorman, massive ego trip, right? I'd then hop across the road then to a club called the Big Apple in Hong Kong, which was a grungy drug den basically, that played good dance music, and all your kind of people were there, all the misfits in life, all the all the ones you just crack on roller spliff with and I'd dance all night, mate. I would literally dance for 6 hours to about 8 in the morning, sometimes 10 in the morning. So I'm dancing for long enough to run a marathon. And I haven't eaten because when there's crystal meth so strong, it puts you in flight mode, so running, escape mode, so full of adrenaline. And when you're in that mode, your stomach shuts off because your body doesn't want to be wasting energy. It could be running away from a tiger or something. It doesn't want to be wasting the energy digesting food. So your stomach shuts off. And because you're flooding your brain with this chemical, and you're flooding it with false adrenaline, you can't eat. So I wouldn't eat for days. I'd go 5 days without a meal, which feels fine when you're high, but when you crash, that hunger just comes bang back to you in a split second, and I'd be famished, absolutely in starvation mode. I'd grab a McDonald's breakfast. I couldn't eat it fast enough, mate. I'd eat it like a wild dog, just shoving the calories in my face. My food of choice became loaves of raisin bread drenched in condensed milk. So a whole can of condensed milk poured on raisin, and I couldn't eat it fast enough, and I would live on that because my body craved the calories. And anyway, this went on for a bit, and I gradually lost one job after the other, or I resigned from one because it wasn't for me, or there was some language barrier and it led to me getting sacked, all this kind of stuff. So I went through about 5 jobs, including the sales one, which I just jacked in because I didn't want to keep lying to people. And then, cut a long story short, I'm wandering through Wan Chai one day. Wan Chai is the gangland, clubland, disco land in Hong Kong. It's the old where all the sailors would traditionally go. It's where all the girly bars are. It's where all the it's run by the 14k Triads, that patch of Hong Kong. So I wandered in a club looking for my mate. I'm homeless. I'm sitting on my backpack during the day, watching the cars go by, thinking, what happened? What? And the crazy thing is, Frank, it didn't even feel bad or anything. It just felt like this is my life. This has always been my life. It just, life don't work for people like me. That's what I felt. Didn't matter that I'd had glowing 7 years in the Royal Marines. That didn't mean anything to me. It was like, I'm back in that place, aren't I? That place I was before I joined the Corps, where I'm utterly useless. I've got nothing to offer anyone. Nothing works for me. And on top of that, I've got a raging drug problem. And so I did 2 things. I hocked my first Rolex. Got £1,000 for it. It's a little treat I'd bought for myself after Northern Ireland, or it might have been Norway. And I just thought, don't even think about it, Chris. Get in that pawn shop, hock it, put the money to some good use. Well, what are you going to put money use towards when you've got a chronic drug problem? But I did manage to put the deposit down on this crummy old flat on the top floor of a skyscraper in Wan Chai. Very old school place. The old part of Wan Chai, not modern Hong Kong. Like the old Bruce Lee films, this kind of Hong Kong, right? People so superstitious there. They'd hang mirrors outside their window to reflect the evil spirits and stuff. A really deep-rooted superstition and a different culture. On top of my roof, there's a homeless guy, lived like a urban caveman. Just all his skin was black from dirt. You know, when people who live years on the street and have never washed it, they become just like take on this black sheen. You know, he had talons with claws, and his hair was just this big thatch of hair, like a troll or something. It was a very weird time. There's a homeless guy sleep on the stairs outside my door. I used to sneak out in the middle of the night. I used to take him like a bottle of rum and leave him a bottle of rum or some sandwich or some food or something, you know. Anyway, wandered into this club looking for my mate, see if he could get me a job. And the boss of the club went, "No, your mate gone. He gone Thailand." I went, "Okay." He said, "You can do doorman job?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do the doorman job." "Okay, start here tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Wow. I've gone from being homeless, skint, desperate, frantic, worried, you know, to suddenly being back in a job again. Oh, it was just, felt so good. On the first night in that job, one of the expats at the bar, is a Chinese-run club now, Frank, not an expat like all the other clubs I worked in. All the other clubs I worked in have been owned, or the two other clubs I worked in were owned by Scottish people. So they're expat clubs owned by Westerners, basically. Yeah. The Chinese just left them alone because the Triads don't fuck with Westerners. They just know to leave it. They don't get our world, and they just leave it, right? They pick on their own, the Triads. So this club now, this is a Chinese-run venture. And as with any nightclub in any red light area in the world or gangland area, is controlled by organised crime. In Hong Kong, it's the Triads. In Wan Chai, it's the 14K. 14K is a global triad. They run Wan Chai, but they got foot soldiers all the world over. They'll have people in Chinese restaurants in London, in all this sort of stuff. But I'm there. I'm just a naive young ex-marine, thinking he's a bit of a lad, but now realising no, I know fuck all, and I've got big problems. I'm not as hard as I probably thought I was a year back. And on top of that, you know, I'm massively addicted to this stuff. And on my first night in that club, there was an expat drinking at the bar, and he said, "You know they're all Triads, Chris, don't you?" I'm like, "What?" He said, "These boys, these guys you work for now, they're all Triads." Well, my ears just picked up, Frank. To me, that's fascinating. It's like Bruce Lee shit, you know. I've come from a gang. I come from the British military. It's the biggest gang in the UK. Well, next to the church, it's the biggest gang in the UK. I felt immediately I'm home from home. I'm with hard nut boys. That's where I've come from. That's where I am now, and it felt really good.
Yeah.
The boss, right, this shifty-looking geezer, Paul Eng, I call him in my book. The one eye looked up that way, and one eye didn't look up that way. Right, it was very evil-looking man. He was a Dilo, Big Brother. Big Brother means gang leader in Triad speak. He controlled this gang in Wan Chai, and particularly the workers in this club. Well, this expat says, "See your man there, Paul. He might not look much, Chris, but he's a well-respected man in Wan Chai. You don't want to mess with him." Said, "Your guy there on the door, Daisu was this 6 foot I said in my book he was like 6'4" or something, but then someone said to me, Chris, that's like a basketball player. So probably exaggerated there, but he was like 6'2", which is really tall for a Chinese guy, right? He said Daisu's, they call him Violet Hand, means assassin. Every now and again he disappears and he gets smuggled into China to do a hit on someone, then they'll smuggle him back into Hong Kong again. He says, your other man there, this is my other fellow doorman, Chu Chai, he's a street fighter. Magi, they call that in Chinese, means little horse, means a runner, like an errand boy, but, you know, they have a level of hardness that you won't see probably outside of the football terrorists type of, like, I'll give an example. So anyway, my point is, I felt like I'd come home, Frank, you know, especially the following morning. So when we shut at 8 o'clock the next day, one of the barmen come over, so this little triad guy, or if he wasn't a triad, he was a wannabe, you know, a prospect sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, Chris, you want to come breakfast with us? Whoa. My new family, right, are inviting me for breakfast. And Frank, I should just say here, I was never a triad, right, because I'm white for a start. They don't do... You got to be pure blood Chinese to be a triad, right? There's rumours that white guys have been over the years, but I don't know anything about that. But I'm telling you, in Hong Kong, they'll look after you because Confucius says the boss looks after his workers. Will they trust you? Nah, will they fuck? They just don't know you, you know, like chalk and cheese, mate, you know. So I was never a triad. All I was a guy that took the job as doorman, right? And doorman don't necessarily mean bouncer in Hong Kong. It's like you are literally... Well, that club didn't have a door, so it's not like the guy that opens the door. But my job was to try to calm down trouble, not to get hands-on and physical with people, although I did a few times in it with varying degrees of success. So I was never a triad. I would say I never wanted to be one, but the truth was I was so low at that point in my life, I probably did a little bit. I felt good, mate. You know, it's all left brain ego stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I was suddenly up there again. I work with the hardest guys in Wan Chai and you don't fuck with us. That made me feel good, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I say go to breakfast with the family, that's what it felt like. And the boss pays for everything. I tried to chip in on the bill and one of the triads told me off. Like, what are you doing? You shut up. You say our boss don't have money, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you see the difference in culture? I'm there trying to be British politeness. They interpret it as I'm being rude. I'm saying that the boss hasn't got enough money, and I need to get, you know,
sort him out, like
it might sound silly, but it really fucked me up, mate. This me trying to be a kind soul, let's say, you know, which we do in our culture by buying people little gifts, don't we? Here's a beer, you know, slide a beer along the bar, or you tuck 20 Marlboro in someone's pocket. You know, it's what we call kindness. Over there, it's the complete opposite. It's patronising. I don't need you. I don't need a beer from you. What, you think I don't have money? Right? This is and for a confused young man, and for all my faults, I want an horrible person, Frank. You know, I mean, I had obviously had the capability of doing horrible things coming from the military, but in myself, I wasn't like a horrible person. I was just trying to find a home for myself and fit in. And I thought I'd found that. You know, you walk through Wan Chai with the 14K, and all the pedestrians just move out your way. Do you feel $1 million, mate? Especially if you're off your head on crystal meth as well. Yeah. And so that was it. That was my story, and it got a bit deep and dark. The reason I mentioned the football hooligan thing is one day this old boy, I'll say old because I was young then. He's probably like our age, you know. Now he wasn't like pensioner or something. But anyway, I'm standing in the stairwell where I stood most of the time, looking up the stairs. All stairways in Hong Kong clubs are mirror lined, right? And you wouldn't know this as a Westerner, you wouldn't have a clue. But it's Feng Shui. Feng Shui, they put it out in Gucci Western businesses and shit as being like for good luck and prosperity. It's where you point your furniture and all this. It's not about that. It's about bringing prosperity into your business at the same time as reflecting evil. So all staircases are mirror lined, and that's to reflect the evil spirits out of the place, right? This I'm not taking a piss, Frank, right? This is serious, right? In the same way that we won't walk under a ladder, even though there's no sense in it, but we just don't do it. I don't walk on. I walked under a ladder once, cost me $3,500. So I don't walk under a ladder again. I know it's silly. It's just I choose not to do it. It's stupid. But over there, it's much more serious. It's all about ghosts of dead ancestors and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm at the bottom of the stairwell. The mirror staircase is going up. The club is facing the sea because you always have water in front of you for prosperity and mountains behind for security, right?
Right.
That's why when you see Chinese restaurants, they have the fish tank in the front. You know, lots of them have a fish tank in the window.
True, yeah.
That's if you don't face the sea, you've got to have some form of water, right? This is how serious it's taken. Anyway, there I am in the stairwell. Chu Chai, the street fighter, is looking up the stairs, waiting for the next punter to come down. I'm just like looking up the stairs, looking into the club. When I look into the club, Daisu is charging towards the door with this bloke over his shoulder. Chu Chai still hasn't seen. I immediately spread eagle myself against the back wall because this is not my business. This is Chinese business, right? I don't get involved. I don't understand it. It's not. I'm not Triad. This is Chinese. Just get out of the way. Let them do what. Daisu just hoofs this guy onto the ground with a like that. Just dumps this bloke onto the ground. Chu Chai does this double take. He goes, and in that second, mate, the anger in those blokes' eyes and the evil, you could see it. Just radiating from their eyes. They turned around and they started kicking that guy in the head as hard and as fast as they could, right? I describe it in my book as Millwall getting one of their enemy, out of sight of the CCTV cameras. It was graphic, Yeah. And this little bloke, who looked a bit of a ratty sort of bloke, managed in a split second to recover himself enough, and he just burst between the two of them up the stairs. They're screaming, "Jule Lamo," which I won't even translate for the sake of your podcast. I don't know if YouTube software picks up on Cantonese, but yes, let's just say your mother comes into it, right?
Oh, so even too frank for frankly speaking.
Yeah. Hey, you did invite me, mate. What did you expect? So they're screaming this abuse as this little old man runs off. What they didn't see, Frank, is a bit of paper had fallen out of his pocket. And as they're screaming abuse, I just bent down and picked it up and tucked it in my pocket because I'm fascinated with all this shit, right? And when they went back in the club, they weren't looking, I took it out. It was the name of a horse. So this guy had obviously been in the club pushing hooky horses to people. You get it in Hong Kong. You get funny things happen in Hong Kong. First time I was ever in Hong Kong, I've been there I think I've been there 4 times now. First time I walked out the pub, there's 21 people dead in the street outside. There was a guy running up and down, rampaging up and down the road with his gang, shooting AK-47s on another occasion, robbing jewellery shops. So, but some of the more minor things that would happen was a phone number would go around, a phone code, right? You get given this phone code. You can make all your international calls, using that code all for free, right? Basically, someone in a company had stolen the company phone code. It's just, we didn't have that stuff in England. You know, in England, you pay for every phone call or whatever. So that was weird. But another thing that would happen when you work for the Triads, you get given a name of a horse. Every so often, one of the Triads would come up to you and go, there you go, Chris. They give you the name of a little bit of paper and it would have a horse racing name on it. Racing's really big in Hong Kong. A place called Happy Valley. They race these beautiful, beautiful thoroughbred horses, right? Or the Triad will come in and they give you like 200 knocked off Marlborough. Or Marlborough that have been faked in China and stuff. Anyway, so this guy had obviously been doing some sort of hooky betting in the club. Maybe he was from another Triad family, I don't know. But they just kicked the shit out of him. My mate that worked on another door, he was called Chris as well, funny enough. In fact, no, sorry, a third mate. I won't say his name, but he got chopped up really badly by the Triads with their meat cleavers. He was just a doorman like me. Turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. So yeah, so tying it all in, mate. I left Hong Kong because I become so mentally unwell. I overloaded my brain with all these chemicals, and I literally lost the plot. And even when I found myself trying to crawl between two skyscrapers across a wire cable, thinking that that's what my commando training was for, I still didn't realise I was really mentally unwell, Frank. You know, I still didn't realise. For me, it was all just one big conspiratorial plot, and I was trying to work it out. And anyway, got back to the UK after what was just over a year in Hong Kong, and I spent then best part of 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, chronically depressed, sleeping on a sofa bed in front of the telly in the front room, everything. My place just become a hovel. I had no motivation. The only time I could get off that sofa bed was if I could buy drugs, which by this time I was injecting into my arm whenever I could get hold of them. My diet for that 18 months was bovril on toast. The bread I would buy for 17p in the Co-op supermarket, buy their cheap sliced loaf. The bovril I'd have to shoplift because I didn't have money to buy frickin' bovril. That's too expensive. All my money went on the gear. If I didn't eat that, I used to mix pasta and porridge oats. Mix pasta and porridge together, shove it in the microwave with some milk on it, and then put 20 sugars on it. And I survived on that. It's not surprising. I'm now missing one of my teeth. And one day I had my enlightenment. It felt like I'd lost everything by this stage. The only thing in material terms, I hadn't lost is I still had a roof over my head.
Yeah.
But it was dark, mate. It was dark. And one day I woke up, I was cold, I was shivering, starving, hungry again. Used to take me a few seconds to remember who I was. I was that exhausted. When you wake up, you can't remember your name. You don't know who you are. It's like waking up with amnesia. You're like, right, where am I? Who am I? What's my name? Chris what? Don't know. What am I doing here? What? And then suddenly it would come flooding back. Right. I'd spent so many days awake on amphetamine that my body had I'd just fallen asleep where I was. You know, the pivot point between being wired on drugs and being absolutely exhausted, it just tipped. And in that moment, you go unconscious and you wake up 2 days later, starving, hungry, confused, and wondering where your life's gone. And in that moment, I had nervous breakdown, what was probably number 3. You just start crying your eyes out. You don't know why. You just know this ain't right. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for this. And in one of those moments, Frank, I just saw the light shining through the blinds in my front room. I thought, do you know what, Chris? When you was a little boy, you adults should have looked after you, and they didn't. But now, you're a man. And yet, you're still that little boy. I don't know if this makes sense to people, but I still feel the child. Even though I'm 51, I still feel I'm that little boy. I don't know if everyone feels that, or if it's just trauma victims, or what or trauma experiences. I don't know. But anyway, in that moment, I felt so sorry for that little boy. In the same way I feel now when I hear my son booing his eye. I mean, genuinely booing his eyes out. Not crying because he's having an hissy fit or something. I mean, like when he's blubbering and he's so upset, right? I felt for that little boy who was me. And I thought, Chris, who's not looking after him now? Who's abusing him now? It's you, mate. It's you shoving these chemicals in his arm, thinking it's somehow gonna like at what point did all that shit stop working? It was great in the early days, Frank. Yeah. The early days of the dance parties and the raves and learning about yourself and finding out I had skills that they told me I was a failure at school. You know, having women come up to you and say nice things that you'd never really, it all makes. But what I'd done, mate, is I carried on the party after everyone else had gone home. You know, I carried on the party for 2 years, 3 years, after everyone else had gone. Fuck that, Chris. We got lives to get on with, mate. We got mortgages to pay, kids to feed, careers to thing, and there's me still, you know. And in that moment, mate, it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I burst out crying. Cried my fucking eyes out. For that little boy, that's who I was crying for. He didn't deserve this. It wasn't fair on that little boy. That little boy's a man. I know that. I don't know if that makes sense. It either makes sense. Does it make sense?
No, I'm getting it.
Yeah. Okay. And in that moment, I knew I had to change. I knew it, and I knew the only person that could do it was me.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, Chris, this ain't going to be about being an angel, because I don't want to be an angel. This ain't going to be about giving up the you-know-whats, because they weren't the problem. I enjoyed all that shit, believe it or not. The problem was I had a psychological condition driven by childhood trauma called addiction, and I couldn't stop doing that stuff. That was the problem, right? You know, having a pint in the pub on an evening, that's fine. That. But if you have to be in that pub every evening, and then after everyone goes home at last orders, you're getting a carry out. That's you got a problem, and it's gonna. That was me, right? So I thought, I ain't gonna be an angel, but I need to get balance back in my life. So I need to cut that shit down. So instead of spending all my benefit check on that stuff, I spend a tenner. When it was gone, it was gone, and I was strict with myself. When it was gone, have your little buzz. When it's gone, it's gone. Don't carry it on, Chris, because it don't work. You don't get anything done. Your house is a mess. You can't get a job. All your friends are. It doesn't work. Stop thinking that life works for you. It doesn't work anymore. Face the reality. But I'd still have the little buzz, Frank, because that was, just to get. I couldn't help it. Every couple of weeks, I'd just get that urge to. I've got to dabble. I've just got to have a little dabble. I've got to. It's called acting out in substance misuse terms. It's called acting out. It's as addictive as the thing itself. It's getting your needles ready, getting your spoon clean, giving it a little wipe with an alcohol wipe. Fucking horrible, but anyway. And I knew I had to take action. So I said, right, I'm going to do one thing a day towards my future. That's all. I'm just going to do one thing a day. So I did the washing up. Only the difference was, when I did that washing up, rather than see it as a chore, because I usually had 2 weeks worth of washing up to do from the last time I had a binge, right? Yeah. You know, I could only function when I was off my head. So here I am sober, just having a cup of tea, maybe a roll up, and I'm washing up. Do you know what? I'm actually feeling quite good about it.
Mm.
And I knew my life had changed, Frank. I just knew it had changed. I knew something fundamental, something deep within me had changed, and I was never going back.
No.
And that was 1998. I did a fire walk. To raise money to go and study in Norway, of all places, to then go and become a volunteer worker for underprivileged kids in Mozambique, for street kids in Mozambique. The organisation then asked if I would drive this bus to India and back to write articles on people living in poverty. I'm like, what? Will I drive a bus to India and back? You are fucking right, I will drive a bus to India and back. Best, just unbelievable experience. Unbelievable. Across the deserts, spending time with a Bedouin, you know, seeing those sunrises, sleeping out in the open air, eating the food with your hands. You know, you do other stuff with your hands. I'm referring to toilet habits here, and I'm not knocking any of it, mate. It was a fucking eye opener. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Off the back of that, I got into studied youth work, got a degree. Never thought I'd be at uni. Did an access course first. Started working with mentally disabled people and people with learning challenges. At the same time, put myself through uni, and at the same time I used all the leave to go travelling. So as I said earlier, I backpacked through every country in the Americas. I got kidnapped trying to buy coke in South America. Just had an amazing time. And yeah, it's brought me to where I am today. I started writing books about 12 years ago. I started because I lost yet another job. I'm square pegging a round hole, right? And I say that as a good thing. I don't want to be a round peg, mate. I just don't want to be. So I started to take action. It's all about taking action. So I took action again. Started writing that book that I've been promising I would. And you know this, you know, you start putting the words down, you start getting your manuscript together, and things happen. Got published in Hong Kong of all places. Next thing, I'm a internationally best-selling author. I'll say that in the loosest terms, but I've sold best-selling books in more than one country, so you know I'm going to dine out on that fucking little chestnut.
You'd be proud of it, mate. You'd be proud of it.
You know, especially coming from where I've come from.
Yeah.
And then started to dabble on the YouTube and this sort of stuff. Then started getting asked to do public speaking, and that's where I am now. And I don't really have a mission. Probably I should, mate. I'd probably make a lot more money if I actually focus myself. Not that I'm really... I keep getting told I need to be more interested in money, because if I'm not earning it, I'm not helping enough people. So I don't have a problem from that respect. But I've lived everything I've told you, all my adventures. I've done it on less than 10 grand a year, mate.
Yeah. With
the one exception of 3 years I worked in a treatment clinic, substance misuse specialist. They paid me 26 grand a year. I didn't know what to do with it. How can you earn that much money? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I spent it on an expedition to Antarctica. You know? So what my message is to people, it's not about what you earn or what you possess. If you're unhappy in a company, you've got to make changes.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you fancy travelling, you got to do it. You got to take action. Get your backpack on. Don't think about it. As long as you've got insurance and an airline ticket, that's all you need.
Yeah.
Get a guidebook. It will tell you the cheap places to stay. You do what I did. Take your camping cooker. Cost you less than £2.50 a day to travel the world. That's what it did me. Okay, it was a few years ago. You could probably up that now to a tenner. But yeah, you're in Bolivia. 3-course meals, 75p.
Yeah.
Bed for the night, 50p. Again, everything's changed now. Everything's more expensive. But you know, this is what I try and do now, Frank, is get people to cut through the bullshit and see it for what it is. Yeah. My message is, you get one life. If you live it right, one is enough. My other message, because I've got a few, is one life, smash it. No one's going to do it for you. And when you're dead, when you're on your deathbed, you will regret it. You will be like, oh fuck, I never did that skydive. I never ran that marathon. In fact, I was a bit of a fucking wimp all my life, wasn't I? I let other people tell me how good I was. I let bosses tell me what I should earn. I let that black box in the corner of a room tell me how I should think. Yeah. And yet there was that nice guy, Chris Thrall, telling me to cancel all that shit all along, and I laughed at him and called him conspiracy theorist. Yeah.
Well, Chris, I've got to say this, mate. You know, people by now know the criteria, you know, for coming on to Frankly Speaking. And that is, you know, we want real people and inspiring people. And you've certainly been real, mate, that's for sure. And from, you know, where you've started, I think the main thing is, you know, you've identified what's best for you. You've clearly identified what was bad for you. But importantly, you discovered what was good for you, and you've enacted upon that. And that's the inspiration. That's the inspirational part. You know, that anybody watching this, whatever situation they're in, whether that's a lack of identity or the drug abuse or any sort, you know, other, you know, psychological problems, that they are surmountable, and you've proved that, and you continue to do that. And I think you should be congratulated for that. And hopefully more people will listen to your messages that you've got, the very positive messages, and you know, and we'll carry that forward, and also share those messages themselves, because I think that's what we're all trying to do. I think we're all trying to identify the bad, we're all trying to identify the good, and clearly encourage the good, and you've certainly done that, and I sincerely thank you for coming along today and sharing not only your stories but your messages, you know, the answers to the questions. So if you could just remain with us for a couple of minutes, just while I make a couple of announcements, Chris, and then I'll come back to you.
Frank, you've been a legend. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, mate. Listen, it's been great talking to you. I promise you, pal.
Well, you're cool, Frankly Speaking, but you're going to say to your producer after this, didn't he swear a lot?
No, we love it. Anyway, so again, I'd like to thank everybody that contributes to Frankly Speaking, all those that say leave the comments and their likes, and clearly those that subscribe. I'm enjoying what I do. I hope our audiences are enjoying the podcasts. And of course, once again, I'd like to thank Chris for coming along today and sharing his thoughts and his ideas with us. And as I say, I think he really has been an inspiration. And of course, we wish him all the best for the future. Okay, Chris, lovely. Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot, pal. Take it easy. Take it.